a simple way to almost guarantee that you have a good day. MichaelMcLean.coach. I am a former professional and amateur championship hockey coach, team owner, turned 8-figure entrepreneur. You can sign up for my free daily broken iPhone videos just like this in your email box every day at 6 a.m. sharp at michaelmclean.coach. My wife Krista and I and my daughter Emery were on a sunset boat cruise last night here in Naples, and it was a great time. It was organized by the community that we live here in Southwest Florida. They do an amazing job here organizing things, everything from golf tournaments to New Year's Eve parties, St. Patrick's Day parties. They do a lot of work getting people together in the community. So last night was a 3-hour sunset cruise on the ocean. And it was an amazing evening because we had the opportunity to be on the boat with about 75 neighbors that some of them we had never met before. When they do different functions like this, sometimes you have certain people come out for a certain function. So it's really nice to meet your neighbors. I'm a natural introvert, as you know. I'm happiest, sitting on the end of the dock, sitting by the pool, or with a book. I'm okay with myself. I like being alone. I like being in solitude. I like thinking. I like writing. I like reading. I like working out and training. So for me, these are things that really stretch me out of my comfort zone. Meeting new people in small groups is not my cup of whiskey, but it's necessary. It's necessary for all of us to stretch ourselves out of our comfort zones. You can't hide in your house all day, never leave your home, and then, wonder why you're struggling. So it's really good for us to get out there and meet people. And being on the boat last night, I wanted to share a few things about this sunset cruise. First of all, I have a superpower that I'll share with you today through this story. And it's a superpower that almost nobody else has. And it separates me from 99.99% of other business owners and entrepreneurs. I'm not kidding. Almost nobody has this discipline or skill, especially in 2024. And my discipline and skill, my superpower, was really working last night, and I'll tell you what it is. And it's a superpower that allows me to have incredible influence, to have incredible connection, rapport, persuasion. If I was selling or recruiting, it gives me a superpower in those areas. So if you're interested in scaling up those areas of your life where you can literally make a connection with a complete stranger, make yourself memorable, and have the person think that you're almost best pals after speaking for 10, 15, 20 minutes. So I was taught this skill years and years ago when I was back recruiting blue chip hockey players. If I'm not a good recruiter, I'm not going to be much of a hockey coach, and if I'm not a good recruiter, I'm going to have losing teams. So what I was working on at the time 25 years ago was answering the question, how can I become how can I become the best recruiter in the sport of hockey? How can I become the best recruiter? And what I did is I studied everything that the king of the living room, Bobby Bowden, the head football coach at Florida State at the time, Bobby Bowden was the king of the living room. If there were 15 schools that were in the running for a blue chip recruit, Bobby Bowden would walk in that living room or walk in that kitchen. He would talk to mom or dad or grandma or whoever the decision maker was, whoever had the most power and influence. And he would walk out of that home with that player coming to Florida State. He was that good. Bowden was the king of the living room. I mean, he's one of the greatest college coaches in football history. Once again, a lot of it has to do with the players that were getting off the bus. And that's part of winning. He was the best kitchen table, living room recruiter. So when I studied the books written on Bowden, I studied his own biography. And I studied everything that this man did to recruit the best players in the country. And then I modeled what he did. I took his secrets, his rules, his ideas, his magic touch, and I made it my own. And I went from being an average hockey coach, having average teams, to literally being able to have this superpower where I could almost recruit any player, whether they were a top prospect that we had drafted, a prospect that we had protected in our zone. They might have been a player we traded for that didn't want to play for us. I literally was able to get on the phone or meet the player or meet the parents in person. And within 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, I was able to have that player and parents signing on the dotted line against immense competition. I mean, 21 other teams. So what is that, this superpower that nobody, absolutely almost nobody has anymore? And I used it last night on the Sunset Cruise boat. And it's a superpower that works for an introvert like me. Maybe you're an extrovert. Maybe you love meeting people. You maybe love crowds. You maybe love socializing. That's not my sandbox. But I've found a way to not only exist, but to dominate in those situations, even though I'm extremely uncomfortable in some of those situations. I'm more comfortable speaking in front of 500 people on a stage, 1,000 people, 2,000 people on our honeymoon in Australia. To me, that's a piece of cake. That's a piece of cake. Talking in a cocktail hour or in a group of 5 or 10 people, that's not as much my cup of Earl Grey. So I get on this boat last night, and there's about, 50% of the people I've never met before. So Wayne Maxner, the late great Wayne Maxner, my hockey mentor, coached the Detroit Red Wings, got me my first assistant job in pro, my first head coaching job in pro. Maxner pounded it into my head. Successful people introduce themselves. He saw me standing there once with my hands in my pockets, and we were talking to a couple of scouts. And when they walked away, he asked me, he said, "What the fuck is the matter with you?" And I said, "What do you mean? I was just listening and learning." He said, "Successful people introduce themselves." And I said, "Well, they didn't introduce themselves. Successful people introduce themselves. At a party, at a barbecue, at a cookout, at church, meeting new people." I said, "Well, I'm shy, or I'm a bit of an introvert." He goes, "I don't give a shit. Introduce yourself. Introduce yourself, make contacts, network with people, make an impact. This is business we're in. We're in the hockey business. So from that day forward, that's always been ringing in my ears when I'm meeting new people, no matter where I am, at a conference, at a seminar, at a barbecue, in a new country like the US, constantly introducing yourself. Successful people introduce themselves. Wayne Maxner 101. So I come on the boat last night, and I'm not comfortable because, it's 40 new people there, but I force myself to walk up to people, and I have Krista, who's an extroverted person, if you know my wife, and my daughter, and I immediately, when I'm near people or people are starting to talk to us, I immediately put out my hand, I shake hands, eye contact, and I introduce myself. I introduce my wife most of the time if she hasn't already introduced herself, and I introduce my daughter. My daughter shakes hands, introduces herself. So we make an impact. We shake hands, eye contact, and we introduce ourselves. Successful people introduce themselves. So I literally, over the course of 3 hours, introduced myself and met almost all those people, 40 people. And the other 40 people already knew. So once again, some of those people I reintroduced myself to, reminded them who I was. It's almost like my dad says, in business, every day you're running for mayor, son. Every day you're running for mayor. Every day you're executing your campaign. Flyers, postcards, videos, emails. Every day in business, you're running for mayor. So on that boat, even though don't have any real business connection, it's just hardwired into me. Every day you're running for mayor. Successful people introduce themselves. So you make that lasting first impression, right? Most people are on their phone or looking down or looking at their feet or whatever, and you walk up and you introduce yourself and you look people in the eye, and it has a lasting impression. And you teach your children and grandchildren to do the same thing. So from there, my secret power is this. I do what 99.99% of people, including you, don't do. I start asking questions about the other person. Here's the great thing about living in Naples and being on a sunset cruise. I'm on that boat with some high super achievers. Men and women who are still running big businesses. Some of them are retired at age 55, 60. Some of them ran the biggest car dealerships in America. There's people on there worth millions and millions and millions of dollars. There's some people on there who are amazing husbands, amazing fathers. They're in the best shape of their life at age 80. It's just an entire mixture of high performance people. There wasn't one person on that boat that I couldn't learn something from last night, and that's my mindset. My dad always says there's not a person on earth you meet that you can't learn something from, including what not to do. A person's life is either an example or it's a warning, but you can learn from everybody. So I go in there with that open mind. I introduce myself, but these are super high performance people. So I don't need to say a word other than my name, because I already know everything I need to know about Michael McLean. So I'm not going to gain anything by shooting off my mouth and talking about what I'm doing. I want to know how they do it. I want to know how they figured out the money game. I want to know how he has the largest dealership in Naples, car dealership. I want to know how this guy sells $30 million homes in Southwest Florida. I want to know how you can have a physical body and vitality like this 79-year-old man. I want to learn all the secrets. I want to be a learning machine. Like Charlie Munger said, I want to be a learning machine. But not just books, not just newsletters, not just videos. I want to be a learning machine when I'm out in the real world. So I introduce myself, successful people introduce themselves, and then I ask open-ended questions. And this has to be genuine. It can't be, a game. It can't be insincere. It can't be incongruent. I love talking to successful people. And when I'm on a boat in Southwest Florida with 75 people that are clearly doing very well in a multiple areas of life, I want to know success leaves clues. So when everybody else is on there shooting off their mouth about themselves and what they did, and you don't learn anything. Me, I'm a detective. I just constantly ask questions, and not how the weather is and not how you're doing, none of that. I hate political correctness. I despise small talk. I'm like Jimmy Johnson, the 2-time Super Bowl champion, Dallas Cow. I despise small talk. I don't give a shit about the weather. I'm out here walking in the liquid sunshine. I'm the only lunatic out here today, walking in the sun, in the liquid sunshine, the pouring rain. I don't care about the weather. How did you become the #1 auto dealer in Florida? How did you sell your company for $140 million? How do you have, how do you get in physical shape like that and stay in shape? What's your diet? What does your nutrition look like? How have you been married for 74 years? This kind of stuff. So I'm a detective through questioning. But here's the thing. If you want to have this superpower, the superpower is called listening to understand, by the way. Not listening to respond. That's what you do. That's what 99.9% of people do. They listen to respond. They're listening to respond. Yes, yes, yes. I'm gonna chime in here and I'm gonna talk about me. So you're not even listening to the person, whether it's your wife, whether it's your daughter, whether it's your son, whether it's your boss, whether it's your accountant, whether it's your friend, whether it's Henry Ford standing across from you, or Muhammad Ali, or Jesus Christ. You're listening to respond. You're listening to respond. Doesn't matter who there. I know so many people. You could be talking. I could be telling them, I just met the Pope, and these are the 3 things he said we need to do this year. And he or she would say, yeah, I'm hoping to meet the Pope someday, and go into a story. So listening to understand is such a rare skill. Listening to hear and listening to understand. So not only do I ask open-ended questions that people love, right? What do people love? I'm talking about the #1 thing. What's the #1 thing that people love? What's their favorite topic? Themselves. What's in it for me? That's their radio station, right? There's nothing wrong with that. We're all wired like that. So I get on that boat and I don't know these people, and I introduce myself. I make a good impact. I introduce my wife, introduce my daughter, and then boom, I get into their favorite topic. How long have you lived in Naples? How long have you lived in this community? What business? When did you get into business? Entrepreneurs love that. When did you start? When was your first job? Had a guy there, he started his only job, worked at 17. Age 17, he started McDonald's, and now when he sold them 19 McDonald's. I asked him, I said, how'd you make your fortune? I mean, he's happy talking about money. And he's like, I started at 17, the only job I've ever had working at McDonald's. And he said at my peak, I had 19. My children, he says, have 5 of them now. He says, over 19 of them. And he goes, I've always worked for McDonald's as a franchisee. The guy is loaded. And they love to talk about that. Getting started at age 17 or selling encyclopedias when they're 12 years old, or their newspaper route. I just love that stuff, and they love it too. And then I talk about, their childhood. I ask them questions about their mom, their dad, everything, where they are in the winter. Do they stay here year round? We even get into politics, even politics and religion, because I'm not making comments. I'm just listening. And I'm just like, wow, just one chunk of knowledge after another. I mean, and once again, what do you think's happening with this person? All of a sudden, you're building rapport, you're building influence, you're building persuasion. I could sell these guys last night. I could have sold them ice. I could have sold them bug spray, and there wasn't any bugs. This is the power of listening to understand. And I just kept asking them questions. They're thinking deeply. What was your best year ever? What was your toughest challenge? What was your greatest defeat? All this stuff. What would you tell a young person now starting off in business? Question after question after question. They love it. Absolutely love it. And of course, I'm the only person on the boat that doesn't have what? I don't have a cell phone. So I'm 100% connected mentally with my wife and with my daughter and the people I'm talking to. I'm not working, I'm not answering texts, I'm not taking videos of the fucking water when a dolphin goes by, none of that. I'm just there. And if something spectacular happens, I see it in my mind's eye in reality. And I have it there forever. So that's my superpower of influence that I learned from Bobby Bowden, that I now use in a new country, in a new city, in a new state, recruiting hockey players, hiring employees, hiring managers, shooting videos, is I've trained myself to be one of the world's best listeners. Think about that. Well, Michael, I'm not really good at anything. I don't know what my gifts are. You talk about people having one or two gifts. I'm not sure what my gift is. Here's one. Become the world's greatest listener. Become the world's greatest question asker, and become the world's greatest listener. You'll never, ever, ever have financial problems again. Ever. Joe Rogan. What does Joe Rogan do better than most people? He asks open-ended questions, and then he shuts his mouth and he listens. What does Christopher Mad Dog Russo do? Everyone's like Mad Dog firing off his mouth and all this. But actually, Russo's best stuff is when he interviews greats and he shuts his mouth and listens. And then Mad Dog goes off on a tangent, whatever. I tune that stuff out. But when he's interviewing an old school guy, a baseball guy, a football guy, there's no better interviewer than Christopher Russo. He asks incredible questions and then he shuts his mouth. Even Mad Dog knows that's the persuasion, that's the influence. Rogan's the same. Howard Stern, when he used to be a real interviewer, was the same. Oprah was the same. They just ask incredible, deep questions, and then they shut their mouth and they listen to understand. Not even just listen to understand. And if they don't understand, they ask more questions. What do you mean by that? How would that apply to me? How would that apply in 2024? Can you expand on that? And 99.9% of people are more than happy to expand. They love to talk about what? Their number one topic. You would think, right, that a successful multi-millionaire entrepreneur would have all these people asking their secrets, right? But just like you have to understand, nobody asks you how you did it. They don't come up to a guy like Bill Gaw or a guy like Billy Wagner or a guy like Gordon Quinton or a guy like David Linton. Rare as hen's teeth. They don't ask them how they did it. Gordon Quinton built an insurance agency from 3 million to 50 million with commercial niche markets. He barely in a year gets anybody to even ask him how he did it. And the guys that do ask him how he did it are already the most successful guys. Like Bill Gaugh's been a 7 and 8 figure entrepreneur in multiple businesses, insurance, consulting, car washes. Everything he touches turns to gold with hard work. I bet you the guy goes months without anybody even asking him his opinion or how he did it. Like success leaves clues. So if you learn to ask questions and you learn to actually listen to understand, I'm telling you right now, you have a superpower. I was going off that boat last night. I was sure as hell a lot smarter, a lot more motivated, a lot more inspired than when I walked on. And I didn't talk. I just introduced myself and asked questions and listened. And then the funny thing is when you're leaving the boat, everybody that you've questioned is now your new best friend, right? Because they like you for some reason. You're memorable to them. They want to send their kid to play hockey on your team. They want to know my story. They want to know what I'm doing shooting videos in the neighborhood every day. After I showed interest in them first. You know what? It's all about giving first, right? Start with giving. Start with giving in sales. So what did I give? I gave them attention. I gave them respect. I gave them, the stage. And they talked 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 and they talked. And then boom, all of a sudden, now it's their turn and they have interest in me. So I could have run for mayor getting off that boat. I didn't know 40 people walking on it. And when I was walking off, I could have ran for mayor and won in a landslide, as my dad would say. So that's just something to think about if you're especially a person who's not a big social person. Maybe you're an introvert like me. Maybe you're an extrovert. It doesn't really matter. But when I'm in those situations, I used to think it was a negative. Oh, I got to go to this wedding. I got to go to this golf tournament. I got to go to this Rotary Club meeting. And it would bother me because I'm an introvert. And instead, I'm like, you're a learning machine, Michael. Be a learning machine. Be a learning machine. What can you learn from the people in this room? And it's just staggering to think if I hadn't that mindset last night, the stories I would have missed out on, the things I would have learned, the wisdom that I gleaned last night, I could fill a book. I could fill a book today of the wisdom and knowledge that I gleaned from those 70-year-old, 80-year-old men and women. Insane. They all had a secret recipe. They all had tips. They all had shortcuts. They all had, things that, wow. And it's because I was the only person there listening to understand. Listening to understand. Hey, if you're struggling to be the world's best at something, start being the world's best listener and see where your marriage goes. See where your relationship with your teenagers go. See where your relationship with your employees and your managers and your clients goes when you lead by giving. Tell me more about that. What would you recommend? What would be your best piece of advice? How have you been so successful in this area of your life? Man, rapport, influence, persuasion. Speaking of connection, rapport, influence, and persuasion, you have 2 days to still sign up for my first edition, the inaugural maiden voyage edition of my new print newsletter. Yes, another newsletter, Badass Copy. It is my brand new copywriting print newsletter. It's about 8 pages in total. And I do a breakdown. It takes me about 10 minutes, a 10-minute video and a newsletter you get every month. And this month I'm breaking down Gary Halbert's infamous Stop Murdering Your Money full-page ad. I'm going to do that on a 10-minute video. And inside this is, I talk about how to get good on a camera, how to get good on video. I talk about all kinds of our copywriting secrets and tips in this edition. You can get a nice fat $50 discount instead of $300 a month for the Badass Copy print newsletter. $247 if you sign up below. You have less than 48 hours. Tomorrow I'm going to have the print edition in my hand, and then the next day it goes in the mailbox. I just think back to my days of, coaching hockey and then getting in the insurance business and then getting in the coaching business and then getting in the barbershop business and, and then living in 2 places and all this stuff. And I have to look back and say my number one superpower, besides listening to hear and listening to understand, is my ability to sit down and write a swimming pool. To literally sit down and write a house, sit down and write a new car, sit down and write a vacation, sit down and write a private jet for my parents, you name it. And I can do that because of one thing, my ability and copywriting. I've been studying the old masters now for 20 plus years, and I can literally, no matter what happens in the economy, no matter what happens in America or Canada, doesn't make any difference to yours relentless. I can sit down at the kitchen table, I can sit down at the pool, and I can write for money every day. I can write simple emails, I can shoot videos, I can write newsletters, I can write telegrams, I can write sales letters, I can write websites, I can write, you name it. And if you want that same superpower in your life going into a tough time, boy, oh boy, below, best investment you're ever going to make in a specialty that you can take anywhere. You want to travel anywhere, you want to live anywhere, you want to semi-retire, you want to make money on the side, you want to live the laptop lifestyle as you semi-retire, badasscopy.coach. The link is below, badasscopy.coach. Just remember that story that I told you. Successful people do what? They introduce themselves. Successful people ask open-ended questions. Successful people are learning machines. And successful people are always doing what 99.99% of people no longer have the discipline to do. They listen to hear and they listen to understand. That, my friend, is a superpower of all superpowers. 2 words that changed my life, 2 words that can change yours. Be relentless.